So, the Elimination Chamber is only a few weeks away, which is kind of crazy because we only just had the Raw Rumble. But then after we come out of the Elimination Chamber, we got a long old road to WrestleMania, which means we're going to have to do something big at the EC in Toronto. So, of course, we sit down, try and predict the card, and I've actually not been too bad with my predictions recently, although I actually think this one is pretty difficult. And we start with the Women's Elimination Chamber match. And yep, I'm going to make one prediction, and I'm going to be proven wrong, and then I'm going to be sad. Now, we know that Liv Morgan is in this, right? She's already qualified, so obviously Liv Morgan is going to be put in. I don't think anything crazy is going to be happening there. I also think you're going to get Bianca Belair. I also think you're going to get Naomi. I also think you're going to get Bayley. I also think you're going to get Nia Jax, obviously. And here's my big one. I think Io Sky is somehow going to sneak her way in. Now, we should probably start there, because of course it all ties into that recent episode of Raw. We have everything with Ripley, and she wanted to beat up Raquel Rodriguez, and then the referee's like, haha, I have to disqualify you. But just the way that we did it. Now, I'm kind of in the middle of the world here, because it sounds like maybe Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley is on the table for WrestleMania. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But as we have to jump back to another story I think we've got here, I would presume that Jade Cargill is coming back eventually. And so somebody has to have been the attacker. I think it should be Naomi, just because Naomi's been a babyface forever. So let's have some fun and see what we can do. And if it is Naomi, while you have to do Naomi versus Jade Cargill, you also absolutely have to do Naomi versus Bianca Belair, because Bianca should be like, excuse me, you did what? And the best place to do that is at WrestleMania. And because Jade's not factored in here, I guess you could make her return at WrestleMania. But that means she's not going to be in a match. Maybe she can be in Bianca Belair's corner. But it just means it negates both of these two from this match. Now, I don't know whether Naomi accidentally on purpose cost Bianca Belair. And then she says like, oh, I didn't mean to, until it turns out she has been a James Bond villain from day one. But that's kind of why I feel like Io Sky has to sneak back in, because then it would mean that it is going to be Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky. And WWE just made a ha-ha, he-he, funny in the Elimination Chamber qualifying match on that episode of Raw, just so we have a little bit of a more interesting path to get there. Now, it's all about the execution of that story, but I don't mind that, because sometimes in the women's division, and Becky Lynch talked about this in her book especially, it can just be, oh, you've got a championship. I'd love to fight you for that championship. And someone goes, oh, hey, I want to do that too. Whereas now, if you do get to WrestleMania, and you do Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley for the women's championship, which will be amazing, by the way, that match will be so damn good. You can also lean on this to start creating everything that you're going to do. Now, it's difficult, because why have a qualification match that somebody loses? But again, there was shenanigans here. It's just what I felt, right? And because it is quite an audacious prediction, I have to say it. It goes back to when Jack Swagger won the Money in the Bank briefcase in 2010 or whatever it was. At the time, I was just like, you know, being a somewhat ironic Jack Swagger fan, because I was already doing podcasts back then. And the one time I went, nah, he's not going to win Money in the Bank. He won Money in the Bank. So I want to learn from my mistakes. So I think Io Sky is going to win this match. Again, we'll do a proper predictions video when we have the card down on paper. But I think that's the way we're going to get here. Obviously, Bayley, I think we'll get into this as well, because she's Bayley. And I don't know whether Roxanne Perez costs her, but I think this is all building to Bayley versus Roxanne Perez at the Elimination Chamber. I think Roxanne Perez has an Elimination Chamber qualifying match too. Maybe that's against Bayley. If that's against Bayley, well, it could still work out, although you don't want to do the first proper singles match before WrestleMania. Hang on. Right, so thank goodness I checked. Apparently, it is Roxanne Perez versus Raquel Rodriguez to get in the chamber. So this doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and you will have already commented, because that's what happens. You see someone say something stupid, and we go down in the comments, well, maybe we just take Io Sky out of that then, and put Roxanne Perez in there. The point is, if Roxanne Perez and Bayley are both in there, I think it's going to lead to a singles match between those two. So I guess it is going to be, I'm just getting my notes, I guess it is going to be, well, I guess you can take Nia Jax out. I love Nia Jax. She's absolutely fantastic, but she doesn't need to be in this. But if Io Sky isn't going to be in it, it'll be Bianca versus Naomi versus Nia Jax versus Bayley versus Liv Morgan versus Roxanne Perez, and then maybe you take out Nia Jax and you put Io Sky in there as well. But again, what I think this is going to do, this is what I am going to double down on. It builds Bianca Belair versus Naomi, and it builds Bayley versus Roxanne Perez. But then Io Sky still has to win it. You're not going to do Nia Jax versus Rhea Ripley again, for goodness sake. We don't need to do that. Although I guess Charlotte Flair hasn't chosen yet. So maybe Charlotte Flair goes on and takes on Rhea Ripley, but I would definitely do her versus Tiffany Stratton instead. So I've kind of made an absolute balls up of this, but at least we're almost there. It's just an asterisk over one person. But this is, again, what the comments are for. You can now try and steer me in the right direction, and hopefully I can just get smarter. That's what life is all about. We must evolve like Pokemon. I think a really obvious biggest match, though, is Jacob Fatu versus Braun Strowman. It will probably be a no disqualification just based on what we did at Saturday night's main event. But here's the big deal. Absolutely, they should destroy each other. It should be brutal. It should be fun. It should be totally crazy as they fight all in the crowd and people going, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But Jacob Fatu has to win. Don't care how he wins. Well, no, I do care how he wins. I don't want him to win with the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up. He's got to hit his Samoan drop, if he can, on Braun Strowman, would be amazing. He's got to hit his Impaler DDT, and he has to hit his big old prettiest moonsault ever. Love the fact we're calling that now, the BME. Isn't it weird that he's got the same finishing move as Tiffany Stratton, and then he gets the 1, 2, 3? I don't even mind if this is a destruction. Like, if he runs through him in 2 minutes, I'm not going to mind. But I understand that if you are going to a show that probably only has 5 matches on it, which is Triple H's way, and it has been working out, you're going to want a little bit of meat on that bone. But at the same time, these Elimination Chamber matches are probably going to be 45 minutes each. That's an hour and a half before we even get to entrances. So maybe this can be a bit of a squash. And for me personally, especially given the way of the PLE world at the moment and how we sort of buy these stuff, although I understand live tickets are so expensive, I know that I get so much worth out of seeing Jacob Fatu crush Braun Strowman that I wouldn't mind it at all. But I think Jacob Fatu versus Braun Strowman has to happen on this match, especially because Braun threw Jacob out of the Royal Rumble, and that way it kind of justifies what happened at Saturday night's main event. Like, I was somebody who felt like Jacob Fatu could have just won there, and then Braun Strowman could have thrown him out, which justifies the third encounter, I suppose. But we haven't had a definitive winner yet, so it absolutely has to be Jacob Fatu. I think Jacob Fatu then goes on to WrestleMania to win the US Championship. I think that should become his belt, and he should really double down on making that feel like a big deal. But if we don't do this, I mean, where else would you do it? You want it in front of a hot Toronto crowd. They're always loud there. Obviously, you're going to have the Canadian contingent. You're going to have Canadians on here, so there'll be a great atmosphere in the room. And it should really be, look, we're at the start of 2025. Jacob Fatu had a great Royal Rumble. He did whoop the absolute rude word out of Braun at Saturday's main event, and this is the trifecta as he beats him. And yes, like I say, probably engages in a proper feud with LA Knight, who I think will likely win the US title back from Shinsuke Nakamura on a SmackDown. I don't think we're going to do it on this show, but it'll be really, really good, and it'll be really, really awesome, and it will just tell you, especially if you're a new fan, this is somebody that you should care about. But if you want to do it in 90 seconds and do a bit of a Goldberg Brock Lesnar from 2016, I'm not going to get mad because Jacob Fatu is the man. Given they had an interaction on SmackDown too, I think we probably will do Tiffany Stratton versus Zelina Vega for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I'm fine with that. Like, it lacks jeopardy. Nobody is going to believe that Zelina Vega is going to win. But I do think if we are going to shuffle the pack around and Zelina got transferred over to SmackDown, you may as well use her. Like, she is a very talented wrestler, and she's very good at getting the crowd behind her as well, which is kind of interesting because Tiffany Stratton at the moment exists in this weird middle ground where she's quite clearly a babyface, but she acts exactly the same. But listen, you know who's really good at that? Just randomly, Gunther. You can argue that sometimes Gunther's a babyface, like when he yells at Logan Paul. Sometimes he's a heel when he yells at Jey Uso. So I don't mind people being situational characters. I actually think it's one of the coolest things of modern day wrestling that you can kind of pick and choose feud to feud, because then it makes it more interesting. Like, Seth Rollins is the king of this at the moment. He yells at, Roman Reigns, and he yells at CM Punk. We're like, oh man, but then he says something else like, oh Seth, we really love you, but listen, no one thinks Zelina Vega is going to win. They can go out there, they can have a really good match. It's a good first defense for Tiffany Stratton, because you don't want her to get to WrestleMania. Let's say they are taking on Charlotte Flair. You don't want to get to that match and she's not defended it once. It makes her feel like a paper-thin champion. It's just true, whether it's predetermined sports or quote-unquote legitimate sports. And while it's sort of like feeding a boxer a tomato can just to inflate their record, Zelina Vega is great. Yeah, it's weird. People will get behind it, but maybe they won't because they'll cheer Tiffany Stratton instead. But maybe that's where the intrigue and the interest comes from. I think we can be far more flexible with this stuff now. So you know that Tiffany Stratton is going to win, but the fun and the excitement and the interest comes from the fact, well, what the hell direction are we going to go here? And I think you can probably do a couple of good near falls. Like, oh my gosh, Zelina Vega is going to win. And I guess it all depends whether Charlotte Flair has declared by that point. And if she hasn't, as soon as Tiffany Stratton has won, Charlotte Flair can come out. I would imagine a Canadian crowd is going to boo the shit out of her, and we just draw a line in the sand. We're doing Charlotte versus Tiffany at WrestleMania. I've talked about this in the video I did yesterday predicting the WrestleMania 41 card, so go and check that out. Lots of people mad at me, but I stand by it. I do think Charlotte can win that match. But again, I paved out a whole story there, so it ends all's well that ends well, whatever that phrase is. But yes, I would get Tiffany Stratton on this card again. Brand new champion. Didn't do anything at the Royal Rumble. I don't think you want her to go too straight without that, although I'm saying that Gunther is going to go too straight. But it's different. I just think Gunther has established himself as a world champion, and it's so obvious the direction we're going there. do Tiffany versus Zelina. Now, the next one is really weird because, of course, what happened at the end of Raw kind of circumnavigates it, but I don't think you want to put Sami Zayn in the Elimination Chamber unless he's winning the Elimination Chamber. I don't think Sami Zayn is going to win the Elimination Chamber. Therefore, I think we should do Cody Rhodes versus Sami Zayn for the WWE title. So it's a lot like what we did a couple of years ago when it was Roman versus Sami. That was one of the greatest matches I've ever seen, to the point people wanted Sami Zayn to end the eventual 1,316-day world title reign of Roman, even though it was a quote-unquote B show. That is some... Well, that's just incredible. There's not even words to come up with it. That's just an amazing feat to be able to produce. And while, once again, there's no way Cody's going to lose this close to WrestleMania, though I suppose you could pull a fast one. I doubt it, but you could do. I think that you also have a Tiffany Zelina situation times 100, because Cody is the most beloved over babyface ever, and it's wonderful. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. But would people start booing him if he took on Sami Zayn? Is that something that we want to risk? I say hell yeah. I think if you're a competitor in 2025, you should walk out there with a big chip on your shoulder, be like, okay, well, you can boo me. I've literally been cheered in every other single town I've been to for the last 2 years. You should be able to handle one night of booing. It's fun, it's entertaining, it'll be good for the fans at home, it'll be good for the fans in the arena itself. And when you do have that kind of atmosphere, maybe you do start believing, you trick your head and you find that suspension of disbelief and you're like, oh my gosh, Sami Zayn is going to win. I'm sure Kevin Owens will likely screw him over, but I think we should do it. Sami Zayn should always be in a big match on these shows, especially because he is such a mega over babyface. And I don't know when else we're going to do this, depending on what happens coming out of WrestleMania. I think that Sami Zayn is going to become the world champion at some point, so let's just continue to tease it. Now, the reason, of course, we would get here is probably based on the end of what happened at the Royal Rumble, which we haven't addressed yet. But Sami Zayn came out to check on Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. Most definitely checked on Kevin Owens more as his bigger friend, I suppose. But then when Cody had killed Kevin Owens, turned him into zombie KO by throwing him through that ladder, he did come back. I don't want to say come back to gloat, but he was very happy that he had won, which he should have done. Kevin Owens has been terrible to him. But he just had that one look from Sami being like, dude, I don't know, this is the best thing here, man. We're meant to be the good guys, and you're acting like a bit of a dickhead. So I just think if the WWE title is going to be on the line, I want something a little bit special, a little bit different, a little bit Canadian, which sounds absolutely dumb, but we've seen it work so many times before, so why shy away from it? So let's just take a shot, man, and let's see what happens. I'm down for it. And even if Sami Zayn won the World Championship, I am not going to mind. In fact, it would be very much like a Jey Uso situation. The internet would melt down, but I'd be running around my house going, yeah. That's all that matters, is my entertainment, although, of course, I want you to be entertained as well. So I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to manifest it. And I just think much like Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, which sort of came towards the end of the pay-per-view, but not the very end, because I think the Men's Elimination Chamber probably will, because WWE likes to bookend these. So they didn't last year. It was Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax in the main event, although we were in Perth. Although, actually, now I've said that, so you could do Cody Rhodes versus Sami Zayn. Actually, it would make more sense to put that as the main event, because then once again, you start to trick yourself. You'd be like, oh my gosh, they're putting it in the main event. He's going to win. I just think we should do it. WWE is bulletproof right now. They would have some amazing promos. I love the idea of two babyfaces really getting into it because of somebody's behavior, even though the other guy has been a massive dick as well. And that's the issue, right? Kevin Owens killed Sami Zayn with a package pile driver. So how you all of a sudden pivot to Sami Zayn versus Cody Rhodes, I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think we're going to do a Gunther match here. I think we can call hold, hide, fire on Gunther for now. And again, we're in Canada. Sami Zayn needs something big. And I understand you can now say, but Simon, if he's not going to win the Elimination Chamber, what's the difference with him losing in another match? I just think if the WWE title's on the line, it's going to send people a bit crazy. It's the point of wrestling. It's meant to put a smile on your face. Right. The Men's Elimination Chamber. I also technically have 7 people written down, but let's go for the ones that I think are obvious. CM Punk is in it. We know that. John Cena is in it. Got a buy, right? CM Punk's really mad about it. Seth Rollins surely has to be in it. Damian Priest has to be in it. Drew McIntyre has to be in it. And I think Kevin Owens is going to sneak his way in there as well, because I do not want him not on this card. Again, he's a Canadian. Canada will love him. I don't think we're going to do the Sami Zayn match here, but then again, now I'm talking, you could do that, because maybe you do Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn at the Elimination Chamber. That's when Randy Orton comes back. He was my secret 7th man in the chamber. But maybe, no, you hold him off. He comes out. He attacks Kevin Owens. That kind of gives you an out of that match. Maybe do Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania. That's totally random. I don't think we should do that. I think KO versus Sami one-on-one is far more interesting. But I just don't want Kevin Owens not to feature, A, because of the location, but B, I understand he's just lost a world title feud, but I want this guy's momentum to be kept up. I want him to be in that tippity top mix. And I suppose if you don't do the Sami Zayn thing there, Sami Zayn could get involved in the Elimination Chamber and they take each other out. You could do that as well, but then I don't know who else you take out of there. Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre, I think, are probably on a collision course for WrestleMania, just given all the rumors and hearsay that we have heard. And in order to heat that up to the level that it needs to be, they probably need to do something crazy in here as well. I don't think the winner is even up for debate. I think it's going to be John Cena. Cody Rhodes needs a mega super duper whooper opponent for WrestleMania 41. I believe it will be the Sunday Night 2 main event. So it has to be John Cena. And I don't think John Cena will win that match. I do think John Cena will win the Money in the Bank briefcase, by the way. Different video for a different day. But the John Cena story is way more interesting if he got close once, again, final 2 of the Royal Rumble, fails. Wins the Elimination Chamber, gets his main event, fails. Then we probably get to December. And John Cena, again, using the Money in the Bank briefcase, calls his shot. We just have a pay-per-view. Cool, John Cena's going to win his 17th world title. And we make it super duper obvious. But yeah, I think you need to do something big with Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre to sort of justify why he wouldn't be going after Roman Reigns and the Bloodline still, which as far as we know is still his ammunition. Going to be very intriguing to see if that was a whole work, the whole Drew McIntyre got mad and stormed off. We wait and see. I'm not bothered either way. I just want people to be happy. And of course, CM Punk and Seth Rollins will take each other out. Wouldn't be massively surprised if you saw Roman Reigns get involved here. Obviously, he's out for the foreseeable future, and he's not going to be officially marked down for this card. But coming out of the show, I think we are heading for CM Punk versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. I think that's great. Some people seem really sad about it. I'm not saying there's not other matches you couldn't be more pumped for, but if we're living in a world where that's a match that we can just have, I mean, it wasn't even possible 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. So it also leaves the door open for singles between Roman and CM Punk and the singles between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And in many ways, it's better to do the triple threat match first and then veer off into other things. I mean, you can do it the other way around as well, but I'm not going to get mad at it because I do like to look at it from a who deserves it point of view. And Drew McIntyre deserves it too, but it isn't like it's on the cards for him. So I think CM Punk and Seth Rollins should be in the main event. And WWE is not going to put Roman in the main event. And that is how they should think, because he's a megastar. It's him and Cody as the faces of the company. Sometimes you have to do what's buzz for business, which is why it should be John Cena versus Cody Rhodes. So I'll go with what I've got written down. Cena, Punk, Rollins, Owens, Priest, Drew. I still think Randy Orton has some kind of presence here. But again, if Owens is in it and Sami Zayn does spin off to take on Cody Rhodes and we kind of push pause on that until we get back to WrestleMania, Orton absolutely could make his big return and pull an AJ Styles LA Night where he drove to Canada just because he wants to screw over Kevin Owens. But again, it does make the WrestleMania plans very, very interesting. That's why I shouldn't have done the video yesterday before the episode of Raw. It's like, oh man, I jumped the gun here. But that's half the fun. So there's my pretty crappy, to be honest with you, Elimination Chamber card. Drop me a comment below and let me know yours, because you'll probably get it right and then you'll feel really good. You'll feel good in your tootsie toes. Click the video on the screen, which is that daft WrestleMania 41 thing that I booked. Like the video, share the video. Please do subscribe and hit the notification bell, especially if you're on mobile. That really does help the channel. As does everything down there, including GorillaMind.com/Simon. Use code Simon, get 10% off. These are the fitness supplements I use if you are into going to the gym. I promise you they work. Otherwise, I wouldn't be pimping them out. Otherwise, you can absolutely find me on TikTok and social media, Simon316, Simon J. Miller. Come buy yourself a t-shirt, ProWrestlingTees.com/Simon Miller. Again, there's a SimonMiller.BigCartel.com store as well for people in the UK to try and save you on shipping rates. Less of a selection, but still, hopefully it helps you out. Simon Miller, if you'd like a cameo, especially with Valentine's Day coming up, I'll say I love you to your loved one. Strange marketing tool. But otherwise, have a great day, my friends. See you soon.